Hello YouTube, welcome back to another video. This collection shelf right here has really gotten to the point where there's not much storage left on it. You can see that there's just items stacked on top of one another. The stuff is just really piled on here, and it's really time to get a new collection shelf. In today's video, I'm going to be building a new collection shelf out of 2x4s and other construction lumber for under $35. So let's go ahead and get started. So here's a rough plan that I just drew up. You can see that the shelf will be 75 inches wide. It's going to be 49 3/4 of an inch tall. Each shelf will be 3/4 of an inch thick because I'll be ripping down 2x4s. The shelf spacing here will be 9 inches except for the bottom shelf from the floor, which will be 10. I did this because I wanted to have some space to put different miscellaneous items I might have, boxed goods, other things like that, just to store on the bottom there. So that'll be nice. I didn't draw a top view, but the shelf is going to be 4 2x4s wide, so it's going to be 3.5 times 4 or 14 inches, which will give me plenty of storage to put whatever I want on it. I then made a trip to the local Home Depot and I picked out 10 2x4s. Technically, you're going to need 10 2x4s and 3 2x3s, but I already had 2x3s, so I just bought 10 2x4s and then one extra. Here's all our lumber. You can see I picked some nice looking 2x4s, and then I already had these two 2x3s. Now I'm going to go ahead and do this thing called resawing, and I'll show you what that is. Obviously, these boards are a little thick for just a small shelf right now, and it would be pretty wasteful. So instead of using these entire boards, I'm basically going to slice them in half. So instead of getting a 2x4, I'm going to get a 1x4, and then I'm going to use 4 1x4s to form a shelf surface. I'm going to do this with my table saw. If you have a bandsaw, this would be a much better tool to use for that, but I'm just going to use my table saw because this is what I got. And it shouldn't be too hazardous as long as I keep my fingers clear of the blade and I don't stand directly behind the wood. Here goes nothing. Oh my goodness, that made a mess. Anyways, it actually went okay. You can see that the blade did make several marks, which is expected because I'm not the best at this. But overall, this is all right because if I just flip it over and use this side, this is a pretty nice usable piece of wood. So now I just got to do that 12 more times. Look at all this fine sawdust. I forgot to turn on the vacuum. So we've gotten every single piece of our shelf made now. You can see that pretty much all of them are exactly the same. You can see that for the most part, they all came out all right. The table saw did make several marks, but honestly, that's nothing a little sanding can't fix. I am a little bit of an amateur at this, but didn't lose any fingers today, and that's it for the table saw. So that's always a good start. So I've gotten them kind of laid out, and you can see this is basically one shelf surface, and I have to cut each of these to 75 inches. So I might set up a stop on my miter saw for that, but let's go ahead and get started. Before I start putting this thing together, I'm just going to give everything a light sanding, especially these boards that have the stamping on them, because this just looks kind of bad. So I have my orbital sander, and I'll go ahead and just remove these. So now to connect all of these together, I'm just going to use some of the much abundant scrap and just put them behind, and then just use screws and then tack them all together. I just cut this 14-inch piece of a 2x3, and this is what's going to attach all 4 of these together. And here's a little clever way to line all these up. At the end of the bench, I clamped this just scrap piece, and what this is going to allow me to do is just easily line all of these up because I can just push it to the end. So now this is the easier part. I'm just going to take some 1 1/4 inch drywall screws. This isn't the most elegant way to do it, nor is it the most sophisticated, but these screws will be on the bottom, so they won't really show. And all I have to do is just basically drive these screws into each shelf. And then there we go. So I just got to do that many, many more times. I went ahead and made a stop on my miter saw so I could just cut several of these at a time without having to measure. So I would just line it up. Now I'll just continue nailing these boards together. Here's the first platform done. You can see it definitely does still look like construction lumber, but it really doesn't matter because I'm just really trying to get a nice wooden shelf that'll hold stuff without falling. So it looks pretty good. I took all the boards down to the basement because ultimately that's where the shelf is going to be, so it makes sense to assemble it down here. I took the legs down. These legs actually ended up looking really, really nice because the 2x4s had this nice grain inside, but I don't know, that's pretty rare to see on a 2x4 because usually this lumber is pretty just bland looking, but these definitely look good, so they're definitely going in the front. The camera doesn't really do it much justice, but it actually does look almost like hardwood flooring, but it is really nice. So I'm going to start attaching these legs. I went ahead and marked where the shelving is going to be, so I can just line that up roughly. It should be all right. And I'm going to use these drywall screws, and this is not going to look very good. I might try and hide it somehow, but I'm just going to send screws in and then drive them into these parts here. First 3 legs are on. They went mostly well. The drywall screws, of course, are kind of showing, but hopefully after it's all assembled, I'll be able to cover those up in some way. I did actually have a split here. This one I didn't really pre-drill that well, so it kind of split, but I just backed the screw out. It's all right-ish. I think it's because of this knot right here. Everything else went in all right, and hopefully I won't have any issues with that, but until then, I just decided I'm going to pre-drill my holes just because I don't want to have to make more legs. That would be really annoying. So I got the first shelving on, and then I have this here now. All I have to do is really just line it up with these 2 marks that I've made on all of the legs. And then I'm just going to do the exact same thing over and over again. Also, you can see this lovely split because I didn't pre-drill here. All right, so I ended up running into an issue, and the issue is honestly kind of my stupidity. I ended up building it all the way up to the 3rd shelf, and then I just was like, this does not line up. The shelf was like literally like, if you looked at it, it just looked about as straight as I don't know, something that's not straight. So I was like, uh-oh. And then I checked it with my square, and I was like, yeah, that is not a 90-degree angle. So I ended up having to take it apart, and I guess I was kind of just rushing it. So I cut up these 9-inch spacer blocks so I can hopefully do it a little better, and I'm just going to start building it from the bottom up, so hopefully it'll be a little more level and square, because what I was doing was definitely not working. But I got my angle square out, wherever that thing is, or the speed square. Oh, it's on the table right behind me, but I've been squaring it out. I kind of redid some of the screws. Took a really long time because I just had to like figure out what was square and what wasn't. Really annoying since I already sent holes in, and the screw wanted to follow the original hole, but I was trying to send it into the new one, but hopefully this will work better. Finished assembling it. Right now it's still upside down, but I had to build it up that way. It ended up looking really good. I'm actually pretty proud of how this turned out. I mean, it is upside down right now, so you can still see all of these joints down here, but once it's flipped over, it should be all right. Overall, this was a pretty tedious assembly process because the wood kept, moving and stuff, and it's not perfectly straight, but for the most part, I was able to get it kind of square-ish. I mean, this one is good. This joint here is all right. I mean, you can see there's a little bit of tolerance because not everything's perfect, but at least it stands. I'm a little concerned with how strong these drywall screws are because the entire strength of this shelf is literally reliant on these drywall screw joints. So what I probably will do is cut out some of the scrap and then use them as like spacer blocks between here, so that way we have a little more strength. But I gotta flip this over now. Here's the finished product. You can see it actually came out looking pretty okay. Overall, it does look pretty nice. Of course, there's some defects naturally found in the 2x4s, but other than that, for construction lumber from the Home Depot and less than like $40 worth of wood, I think this came out pretty much how I expected it to come out. Overall, I'm pretty proud of how this build turned out. Obviously, there were some defects, but for the most part, it came out pretty good. If you're planning to build something like this yourself, I will warn you that this was probably one of my more difficult builds. It definitely was a more tedious process because obviously you need to use a table saw to resaw each individual piece and then cut them with a miter saw and then just screw everything together. A bit time consuming. Probably a lot easier if you just buy the correct wood instead of trying to work with construction lumber, which by the way is a massive pain because construction lumber, just picking it at the store like takes a while because you need to get straight boards and most of them are warped in some way. But once you cut them down the center and you resaw them, they tend to warp, so you got to use them really quick. So that's that. And once you start to assemble the thing, it's definitely difficult to align everything because it'll all shift a little bit. Not sure if later on this shelf is going to start cracking or just warping because I use construction lumber, but hopefully it doesn't. I use drywall screws for the entirety of this project. Definitely use better screws if you really want this shelf to be more sophisticated or look better. I didn't really care because I'm just going to put this in a storage room. But if you wanted to have this be more presentable, I would definitely use different wood and better screws. Here's the finished product with everything on it. You can see that it's really just as good as I would expect for this. Everything is on it. It basically holds whatever was on the old shelf plus a lot more, and we still have some free space. You can see this entire bay is basically clear, but nothing stacked on top of other stuff, and I have plenty of space between units, which is nice. But it is really, really nice to have that extra space now. And you can see down here, this was the intention of having this bay, and I really, really like it because I can put anything that I keep in the box down here without, stacking it. But yeah, that's that. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. See you in the next one.